Some scuff issues?
Yeah, issues, but now I'm recording. Okay, yeah, hi guys. So I haven't posted in a month. I made a community post about my recent Stanley Parable theories, but that's about it because I'm lazy and I post when I want to because I have no motivation. But today I'm here with my friend Eliana. She's the one that has a cooler style than me. And
No.
what?
I said hello.
Oh, hello. Yeah, her mic quality is really bad. And
Oh.
today we're going to be reading the horror that is Wattpad, and we're going to be reading Stanley Parable fan fictions, because that's my new hyperfixation. And also, I don't know, maybe later on we might read, like, I don't know, maybe if Eliana wants to read something different, then we can. But, we found a few good ones, and I'd like to say there will be no porn reading in this video. It just makes me uncomfortable, and also I would not be able to read it with the amount of giggling and pain that you would be subjected to listen to. So yeah, there's not going to be any smut. There will be like angst and stuff, and we've already decided on the voice actors. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into this. Okay. So the Wattpad that we will be reading is called. Hold on. I suck at that stuff. So, it's called just Stanley Parable one shots. Which, if you don't know what one shots are, they're just stories that can be read in like one page. And there's 10 parts. It's mostly just fluff and angst. There is one smut at the end that we kind of skimmed through, and we decided that we aren't gonna read it. However, since these are one shots, I don't think that it's gonna contribute to the story at all. And the request page says, just request stuff here. She can't do, or he can't do a smut if they request it, so, but they did, so whatever. So we're just gonna start off with the first chapter. Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's go.
So we've decided that I will be narrator, she will be Stanley, and any other characters that come in along the way, we will figure it out. Okay. Before we start, I just want to say that it's my first one-shot book, so it may be bad. My apologies. Trigger warning, sewer slide. Oh, sewer slide. Sewer slide. Okay, we're getting straight into it. I wonder who's gonna kill themselves. Alright.
Share your screen, bro.
Oh, right. Alright, let's go.
Stanley had gotten woken up. Wait.
You read that wrong already. Oh, yeah. Little warning, Eliana can't read.
It's not a warning.
You're okay. You're not
It'll make
working correctly.
it more funny, okay? Listen, I'm the comedy. Because I can't read.
I'm the stylish main character and you're the best friend.
Stanley had just woken up, got ready, and headed to work. Just a normal day. He arrived a little earlier than everyone else. Well, they still weren't. What? Well, they still weren't here. An hour passed and the narrator hadn't popped up yet. He left his office and started venturing around. He headed back to the break room. Nothing.
I wonder if this takes place before Stanley's coworkers disappeared, or if maybe he's just having wishful thinking. Anyway, yeah, continue.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. He sat down on the couch and looked around. Truly a room worth admiring.
Yes!
But the narrator wasn't here to tell him that. Felt useless without the narrator. No one to scold him for doing the wrong things. No one to shut the doors behind him. A few minutes later, he headed out of the break room to the meeting office. Wait, shit. To the meeting room.
The meeting office.
He headed to the boss's office next after, realizing the narrator wasn't there. He entered the code 2845.
Suck! Okay, I'm done.
I'm sorry. He headed towards the mind control facility. He saw the
This recording is already 5 minutes long. I just like to let you know that.
He saw the narrator was nowhere to be seen. Well, heard. He headed back to the boss's office and back down the stairs. He went to the broom closet to see if the narrator was there. Unfortunately, he wasn't. Whoa, he wasn't.
Whoa! Not even for the broom closet?
God. Poor broom closet. There's no one there to comfort him. Anyway, Stanley headed back to the meeting room, back to the corridor where the narrator would scold him for his pure stupidity and inability to listen. He went on the lift. I'm a voice actor. I should be able to read. My God. He went on the lift and pumped down to the little platform. Jumped. Not pumped. Jumped.
I'm not getting a single line of dialogue, so I have to bear listening to this.
He
Alright.
headed to the red door and looked around. He swore he could hear the narrator's voice. He rushed to that room, the one that the narrator would beg him to go to him.
The narrator would beg him to go back when. Let's not talk about it. Okay.
Oh, it's that ending.
Yeah,
Elijah!
who the fuck is Elijah?
He
I think that.
He stepped up the steps to hear the narrator.
Oh, what? Oh, Elijah. I think I truly feel happy.
Stanley couldn't believe it. Was he being replaced?
Is this some, like, self-insert? What is this?
Who knows?
Who is Elijah?
Wow.
Morse code. Read.
Shit, sorry. He tapped onto the railing. This Elijah person turned around. Oh.
Stanley. There you are. Oh, we were looking for you, right? Beep 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 beep. Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Elijah looked at him with a gaze of pity reflecting from his eyes. Stanley left the room, ran up the staircase, and jumped
Oh,
in hopes
damn!
in hopes for a reset where it'd be normal. He didn't like this one bit. Not one bit. The
That
ending's never
was
good.
not as, like, I thought that was gonna be, like, this is not as angsty as I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
I feel like we both expected there to be some, like, crying or something.
Yeah.
Rush ending cries. Okay, well, I guess it's on to the next story. Chapter, I mean. Okay, this one's fluff. One. Alright, we're back on to the next chapter. Because the last one was kind of disappointing.
Stanley was on his usual way, exiting his office. The narrator seemed rather. I can't read. Oh my God.
Eliana, oh my god! This
I'm sorry.
recording is 8 minutes long, and we've gone through one chapter that has 402 words on it.
Sorry. The narrator seemed rather worried. Stanley was obviously upset. He stared at the door, zoning out.
Stanley? Stanley! Hear me? I don't know. What is that? I think
Like,
this is I think this is my narration.
Okay.
He heard small remarks, comments, whatever they were. Stanley wasn't quite sure. There was a loud voice. Stanley, wake up! Get out of this trance! I think actually this is your narration, never mind.
Blinked a few times and looked around. He walked further to the two doors.
Stanley, perhaps it's best if we go to the break room. You can have anything you need out. You can have a nap or something. On why? What? Only? Maybe only.
Only the right door opened, so he went in it. He continued down the hallway and into the break room. The door shut behind him, and the door in front of him was also shut. He headed to the couch and sat down.
Stanley, are you feeling okay? You aren't acting as your normal self.
He just nodded his head yes in response, then he zoned out again. A few minutes later, he felt an arm wrap around him, pulling him into a hug. He instantly snapped out of it and looked up at the person. It was a man, around Stanley's age, late 20s, early 30s. He had brown, fluffy hair, black glasses, rested on his nose.
What else are they resting?
in front of his deep brown eyes. He had a little facial hair, not a lot though.
This is okay.
Stanley stared at the man, speechless. Or it gave him the energy to speak. Did he even speak? What?
Is that me or
I
you?
think it's me. What?
Could he even speak? The man looked at Stanley, slightly panicked. Stanley, don't be alarmed. It's only me.
Stanley sighed, relieved that it wasn't a stranger. He wrapped his arms around the narrator, happy to see someone in this hellhole of an infinite loop.
Wait, Stanley, did you just speak?
Stanley nodded his head yes. It hurt to speak. His throat burned from it.
Oh, that's too bad, because you're not allowed to. Are you feeling tired? You can always have a nap. I'll be right here for you.
Yeah. Stanley nodded his head. Oh shit! Wrong thing. Wrong. Stanley slightly nodded his head, sitting up. He leaned his head back, staring at the ceiling. What was life? Why was the narrator only now showing up? Why not if?
Okay,
Why
Elliot,
not?
I want you to know that on your audio, it didn't sound like showing up, it sounded like shitting up. Okay, Eliana's awful reading is also altered by my awful audio quality.
You need me to read it again?
No, I think I got it.
Okay. Why not one if the times he needed it the most? Eventually, Stanley fell asleep. The narrator gently pulled him so his head was on his lap, giving him proper support. Sleeping like how Stanley did. Sleeping
It's
how
just
Stanley
English!
did could cause neck damage. Bad English. The narrator rubbed gentle circles into Stanley's back. What? Smiling. Stanley started feeling so much more comfortable around him. He was happy.
Oh, well, at least you're happy. Alright, one. Okay, so, I think this is, okay, I don't ship this ship. I don't ship really anyone from Stanley Parable, because I just don't think it's realistic. But, I think this is cute. I don't think it's really shipped. I think it's just comfort. What do you think?
Cute. Nice. I don't know.
You're not good at giving opinions.
Bad English.
Bad English. Also, you're getting way more reading than I thought you would. Here. What is fluff and flanked?
The character that doesn't even talk is getting the most dialogue.
Exactly. He said one word you said one word inside of that entire, I think he said 426 word one shot, and you still had like most of the dialogue.
Yeah.
I'm gonna skip over fluff because I want to do something interesting and I want to keep you guys waiting because it's been 15 minutes and I know I'm probably gonna have to cut this down a little bit, but okay. Requested by Angel64. Okay. Here. Alright. There you go. Still got a bunch of reading to do.
Let's go. Stanley was working the day away. Stanley was working the day away. It had felt like a second since he started working. It had been at least a few hours since he started. Then he just stopped, thinking. Now, I would say he wasn't. Actually, since this is in third person, you should probably do it.
Okay, yeah, now I think about it. Okay, let's start over. Stanley was working the day away. It seemed that it felt like for a second he started working, but it had been at least a few hours since he started. Then he just stopped, thinking. Now, I would say that he wasn't oh shit, okay, I do suck at reading too. Now, I would say that he wasn't thinking about particularly anything, but he was thinking about relearning how to speak to communicate better with the narrator. Okay, I altered that a little bit. Stanley was aware that the narrator could read his mind, yes, but he wanted to be able to speak to him. Read his mind, okay. To make it feel special. It had been a few years since he had last muttered a word. His vocal cords were pretty much useless at this point. Sure, he could hum, and he had forgotten how to speak. And narrator didn't know how he sounded. He knew how narrator sounded, but why should he be left voiceless? He eagerly finished work to start learning. Like he had been the past few days, he was excited to show narrator after all. And he had been keeping this a secret, so he finished his work and headed out of the building to go to voice therapy to get his learning. Sure, it was pricey, but Stanley didn't really care. He wanted to speak again like he always used to. Okay. Then, about an hour later, he had finished his session and left the building. He checked his phone. Narrator had been texting him. Stanley, where are you? This isn't funny. I'm worried. I've been looking for you for ages. Text me when you get the chance, okay? Stanley headed back to the office as his shift technically hadn't ended. It was just his lunch break. He headed to the office texting the narrator. Hey, I'm back. Was just getting some food. I can't breathe. He entered his office to see narrator sat at his desk and turned the chair turned to the door. Well, narrator said, his eyes fixed on Stanley's. You liar. I know exactly where you've been. You don't need voice therapy. Stanley stared at him. Why was he doing this now? You must know it was meant to be done for a surprise. Oh. It was meant to be done for a surprise for you. Well, that's ruined, he thought. Okay, I think I'm going to read this whole thing. I do a lot of that clicking now. Stanley, as long as you're out there, I can read your mind. You don't need it. But I want it. Oh, wait, that's you.
But I want it. Where is you can't control me.
You aren't wasting any more goddamn money on that.
You just do what I want.
Just stay in the office during your lunch breaks, get food, don't waste money on that. Oh, wait, that's me. And the argument continued. It continued for far too long. Over the next week, Stanley started to slowly be able to speak again. He didn't listen to what narrator had to say about it. On a particular day, narrator was waiting outside Stanley's room, waiting for him to come out, and he did. Stanley?
Narrator.
That was weirdly sensual, the way you said that.
Narrator.
I hate it! This is why we can't read Smut, because I will do that. What was that? You spoke. Narrator was full of emotion. Not sure what to feel. This was his first time he ever heard Stanley speak. Ever. And so a tear slipped down his cheek. You actually spoke. Thank you.
For what?
For not listening to me. I made him turn full American at the end.
Cute.
What?
That's cute.
Stanley stepped forward, hugging narrator, who hugged back. Narrator held Stanley gently, just letting his emotions out. Okay.
That's cute. I like that.
Yeah, that one was cute. Yeah, I have trouble voice acting characters with accents whenever they're sad. I can make my own voice break because that's my own voice and I can do whatever I want with it. Whenever people have accents, it's hard to do. Alright.
If I can do an accent, I'll most likely be able to anything with that accent. Once I can do a voice, I'll just be able to do everything with that voice.
I can, like, I think I can do mostly anything except for crying. I don't know. I can kind of sing. Singing is hard.
Yeah, that's true.
Have you listened to Kokishi's voice actor singing Toxic? It sucks. Anyway. Okay, so we're starting a new story, not because the other one was bad. However, we also wanted to do some angst because it's keeping it interesting, and I feel bad because the other one was kind of boring. Never mind. However, this one's called it's just another Stanley Parable one-shots, and it's by Daydream 1NG. So yeah, you can go read that if you want. And we found a few that we think are gonna be good, and they're angsty and sad. So let's go ahead and get on into them. Alright, this is called Back to Reality, and it's a slow, lingering angst. Alright, short summary. The narrator admits that he doesn't need Stanley around anymore and abandons him, forcing him back to the real world. Stanley wakes up from his miserable life and longs for the narrator in the parable again. This is the first one that I was really sure about. The entire idea came from the song Let Me Down Slowly by Alex Benjamin. Found it years ago, but went back to it and relived it. Alright. I think this is third person, so I have to read it. Okay. Stanley had been in the parable for at least 6 months now. It all felt so natural, as if he had been there his entire life. He could barely remember anything beside it. The narrator could have considered a friend that Stanley had as someone that he'd always been with, no matter the circumstances, and sure, they'd been through bad terms, but none of that seemed to matter now. Everything that happened had already passed, and none of it bothered either of them. Or either of them. Probably either. The both of them would laugh down the halls of the office, listening to corny jokes that the narrator would blurt out of nowhere, or narration mistakes that would be made. Stanley was content with that. But he can only He can only communicate subtly. But that was enough for him. He found himself fully entertained by the narrator's words, sharing his joy, smiling at the sound of happiness displayed with the narrator's voice. And yet, well, I suppose I'll take care of myself now. I don't need you anymore. Did Stanley hear that right? He turned around, eyes staring into the black void above him. Below him, and the model of his own body stood as motionless as he currently felt. Fluorescent square lights floated just below his feet, supported by the invisible ceiling that he was positioned on. His stomach sank. I've had enough, and I'm sure you had too. No.
No. This can't be happening.
Oh, right, that's you. Stanley's eyes widened, yet his limbs wouldn't move. They couldn't move. Placid, right in the position that he was at, he felt them turn to stone, too heavy to move, too hard to bend.
No.
You're joking. Please be joking. He yanked himself. Oh, that first line might be you.
Yeah, you're joking. Please be joking.
He yanked himself out of the chokehold track that he had on him, jumping into the hard barrier. Did I just say barrier? Jumping onto the hard barrier separating him and the parable. Tight fists slammed into the ceiling until his knuckles turned white and his hands felt crushed by the force of his own hits. And yet, nothing happened. There were no cracks, no dents. He was completely powerless. I'm sorry, Stanley.
What do you mean? You're sorry? What the fuck?
His teeth could almost penetrate back into his jaw, and how hard he clenched them. His lips snarled back aggressively.
Let me back in. Please.
The time with you was well spent, though. That's for sure.
You're not allowed to just say that. You can't be saying things. Just get me back into the office. We can talk this through. We can fix this.
His wrists felt like they were ready to break off, and his flesh felt like mush against his bone. He stopped and took a few breaths. Looking towards the doors he was so familiar with. He could remember all the times he was stood in front of them, but this time he wasn't. he never would be again. His breath hitched pathetically.
Don't let me go. Keep me here, please.
Look, Stanley, I'm sorry. I think it'll just be best for the both of us. After all, I'm sure you don't want to be here any longer, do you?
No, God, I do. Please, just let me stay.
His fist started again, softly this time, feeling the weak flesh of his hand push painfully onto the surface. He couldn't do anything about it, could he? Goodbye, Stanley.
Wait. Just give me a few more seconds. Just a split second more. Please,
He felt himself fall, deeper and deeper into the void. The wind gushed through his jacket, held up his limbs, established him, helpless. He could feel the parable slip out of his grasp, no matter how hard he held on, sliding through past his fingertips. The faint smell of paperwork, dust, and ink became empty in the air, and the yellow-white fluorescent lights grew further and further from him, disappearing slowly into darkness. He couldn't breathe. As his own tears floated above him, he shut his eyes, let himself be consumed by the void, and his body go limp, allowing everything to escape, severing the ties between them. And when the speed of his fall accelerated tremendously, he finally gasped a breath of air. He sat up, breath shallow and quick, heartbeat rapid in his head. Fabric supported him, and covers lay comfortably over his legs, his golden rays beamed from behind his curtains. No, that wasn't a dream. He was not going to believe that it was a dream. He lived through that. He spent his entire 6 months in that parable. Go away. He could remember every part of it. He would not let himself consider it would be a dream. He just couldn't. Because that was real. It was real. He was sure of it. He wasn't just going off to forget about it and rule it off. He needed to go back. The clock read 7:15. He had work that morning. He shuffled out of bed, feeling the cold air on his exposed skin, walking through the hall. The wooden planks beneath him creaked hollowly as he felt alone. The house was devoid of people, besides himself, and had been for a while now. The disheveled reflection stared back at him in the mirror. He looked empty. Hair stuck out, stubble dotted his chin. He may as well have been better off in the parable. The sun nuzzled into his hair. That's nestled. I'm just gonna say it nuzzled. The sun nuzzled into his hair as he walked to work. Didn't his place of work resemble the parable? A few months ago, he would have said that the parable resembled his workplace, and yet now, his own office seemed less recognizable than the parable. Maybe it was just that the parable. I know it's about the Stanley parable, but they've said it so much. Maybe it was that the parable cured his boredom, or provided him with a life worth living. He could see it now. Maybe the narrator was right. The parable was an escape from this meaningless reality that he lived in, where he could make choices and create stories and go through every possible path. And yet, the truth was too painful to admit. Oh shit, my mouth is dry. But that was really good.
That was really good, yeah. I think there's a second part to it.
Yeah, no, it said there was a second part. Hope that was right. I'm not too proud of this part, but that was really good. There's like a very off chance that you're watching this, but if you are, that was really good. I wrote a fan fiction once. It was cringy. Anyway, we're gonna read part 2, and then that'll probably be the end of this video because this is getting up to 30 minutes now, and I don't think my phone's storage can handle it. So yeah, we'll be reading this last part. Sorry, this is disappointing. We might make a part 2 video if this gets like enough views or whatever. But yeah, on to part 2. Okay, there's actually 3 parts to this. So we're gonna read those 3 parts. Alright, this is part 2, and like I said, there's actually 3 parts, so we're gonna be reading all those, and then it'll be goodbye. Okay, short summary. This is part 2 of Back to Reality. The narrator admits that he doesn't need Stanley around anymore and abandons him, forcing him back into the real world. Stanley wakes up to his miserable life and longs for the narrator in the parable again. Here it is, absolute gold. I used specific phrases from journals. I wrote documenting some issues just to hit the spot. I hope it was worth it. Hope you enjoy the read. Okay, Eliana, I read the entirety of the last one. Read.
Okay. He focused on the wrinkled shirt he had worn for the past few days, and the black tie he had not washed for weeks.
I didn't know that.
Just for... Huh?
I'm not talking.
Oh. Just you were. Don't lie.
Yeah, I wasn't talking. Get on with it.
Okay. Just before entering through the glass doors, he made sure to put his lanyard over his neck, hanging his ID card covered by a plastic case. There were real people at his workplace.
Listen, that doesn't make sense, but in this case it does.
Yeah, there were real people at his workplace. There were real voices. Shuffling of paperwork, words of printers. Words? Is that the right word?
I
Words?
think it's where's or where's. I think it's where's.
I don't know. He nestled back into society. His office looked as normal as it did in the parable, but instead of a giant 427 on the door, there was a small metal plate with the number on it, along with Stanley's name. Although this entire place looked the same as the parable, somehow it was also so different. As much as Stanley wanted to pretend he was back in the parable again, he simply couldn't. Maybe it was the overwhelming noise, maybe it was how active the place was, maybe it was the fact he had been... Maybe it's the fact he had been working constantly. That's all he ever did here. Sitting in front of the computer, his doors shut, with only a lamp to brighten the area around him. Once in a while, someone may knock on his door. Someone may ask him if he wanted a coffee, or tell him it was break time, but there was nothing else. All people ever did here was small talk, or ask about things to do with work, or have meetings where they would fail at listening to each other's opinions. It was all so annoying. The office was always busy with things moving this way and that, and yet it was nothing more than a building, devoid of meaningful conversations and interaction. Stanley couldn't take the small talk. He didn't understand why people bothered with it. He wasn't much of a talkative person in general. He was only able to mutter a few pathetic words before everything had disappeared from his head.
This is the story of a man named Stanley.
He could almost see himself on the screen, pressing keys while the narrator talked about his miserable job. He
I think
sighed.
does Stanley have a degrading kink? Jeez. You talk about him degrading you a lot and how much you enjoy it. Alright, go. Oh, Stanley, it's time for your lunch break. Bro, get it.
Making his way into the employee lounge, his stomach jumped, seeing the room with 2 doors again.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
The words were pulled fresh out of his memory, and he swore he could hear each word clearly in his mind.
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he just wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Stanley could almost laugh. How much had he done with the narrator for him to just fucking dump him at his will?
It was so nice, and then there was just an F-bomb.
He wanted to be bad. He wanted to shun the narrator for everything he'd ever done. Yet he couldn't. A part of him longed for the presence again. A part of him longed for the company. And it longed so hard that Stanley could forget the final moments of hatred and pain. As if it was simply a delusion pushed to the back of his mind.
I am the most immature person on this planet. You said longed so hard, I swear.
What?
You said it longed so hard, and my brain went to the gutter.
The door to his apartment shut with the click of a door. Shit.
That is not what that said.
I know. The door to his apartment shut with a click of a lock, and everything was silent. Darkness and silence consumed him yet again, as it did when he fell and fell and fell, sensing his body go limp, and he shrunk down, backsliding against the hard surface of the door. He could hear his own breaths escape softly past his lips, and his eyes stared blankly into the abyss of the hallway. Sometimes he felt himself blending into the crowd of society, just becoming another human.
I feel like just becoming another human is better.
Yeah. After all, he was otherwise a useless figure. He was an otherwise useless figure.
Yeah.
Each day was no different from the rest, slowly churning into weeks. Turning? Churning? What is
Yeah.
churning?
Churning means like slowly passing over.
Oh.
I mean, it's
Slowly
basically
turning
it's
into
like
weeks.
turning, but like they just added a British accent onto it.
Slowly turning into weeks and months and years. Just like that. Free time was spent lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling and feeling the world spin around him. The word?
It's probably supposed to be world.
Stanley was a miserable human being. Damn.
Same. Not really. Not really.
No.
Anyway.
His steps shuffled on the loose tiles on the to, His steps shuffled the loose tiles on the bathroom floor, clacking them against each other in the
This
dark.
dude's floor is really bad. No,
Yeah.
earlier he talked about the wooden planks creaking beneath him. How much rent do you pay for this apartment? It sounds like it's beneath the pay of $400. Depends on where you
Alone.
live, which I'm guessing this is Britain, which I don't know how much that would be. But if it's something like the currency of New York or California, your average like closet size apartment, that's gonna cost you about $1,200 a month. Anyway, go ahead.
The narrator's view on him had changed so quickly without him even knowing. It caught him off guard. Why? What made him decide to? Did the narrator get bored? Did the narrator realize how truly dejected Stanley was? God. What happened to the...
You know, Stanley, I'm glad you're here.
And...
Ah, you're back, Stanley. How wonderful.
What happened to the surprises and laughing and the running about carelessly? What was Stanley going to do now? Who would talk to him? Who would keep him company?
Get
He
good at
wanted,
life, man.
he wanted to be mad, but it was the narrator's decision after all. Hold on. And it's not as if he could do anything about it now. He fucking hated himself. He hated himself so much. He fucking hated the narrator.
That's a lot of
He,
F-bombs in the same paragraph.
yeah, he fucking hated how much he missed him. Because he knew he wouldn't be missed the same way by someone so cruel. Yet he hoped the narrator shared all this oh eh. Yet he hoped the narrator shared all the grief and the longing as Stanley had. That he would live forever in regret.
His last words were like, "I'm sorry" and "goodbye." Maybe I mean, I'm a theorist. I feel like he feels bad, but he's not gonna miss you for long.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Because because maybe then they'd have a chance of getting along again. What an ill wish. Was he going insane? Hopeless. He was hopeless. His reflection showed nothing but the gleaming of light in his eyes, reflecting off the cold light from his bedroom window. Yet he could already see his pathetic self in it, grief-stricken and lonely. This was bound to have a good ending. Wait, this was never bound to have a good ending. This was a tragedy, and he had to live through every second of it.
This writer is really good at descriptive narrative writing.
Yeah.
Like that last paragraph, his reflection showed nothing but the gleaming white in his eyes reflecting of the cold light of his bedroom window. Like that's really good narrative writing, and it's a really good Wattpad, surprisingly.
Yeah.
I'll read the next
Yeah.
one because I know your voice is dry.
Okay.
The ability to communicate specific feelings through writing is insane. Just stating them in text can lead to writing that truly conveys proper, in-depth emotions. I don't even know how. I'm proud of the parts that I've written in this entire book, which does that perfectly, and I hope to understand it as we go along. Thanks for reading. Okay, so we're into the last part 3 of Back to Reality. And to be honest, I don't read a lot of Wattpad, but this story's been really good so far. Like, pretty good for like a Wattpad. Like especially the narrative, I'm like obsessed with it. Anyway, I'm gonna probably be reading this one because it's usually inside of third person, which canonically, if I'm a narrator, I should probably be reading it. But my throat hurt, and I read the entirety of the first part, so I'm gonna read the third part. Okay. Back to Reality, Part 3, Angst, Fluff, and Good Ending. Alright. Short summary. This is Part 3 of Back to Reality. The narrator admits he doesn't need Stanley around anymore and abandons him before he's in. This time, his longing was worth it. You asked, and you shall receive. I thought you would all enjoy a happy ending after all the pain that I put you through. So, here it is. There's a bit of angst at the beginning, but it just gets better. Hope you enjoy. Alright. Stanley found that those nights of silence after all the noise were the loneliest of all. Those gray skies eventually brought snow along with them, burying the streets in a thick layer of white and blurring all of its sharp features. Mornings turned into treacherous efforts to pull down his own limbs from the blanket and drag them across the floor until he was out in the open air, becoming fully vulnerable to the biting of ice and everlasting cold. How many days had it been? How many nights had passed? Wishing, praying, hoping for that one same dream, or any dream, that would take him out of his reality, out of the reality of his life again. Let him forget the present moment. The thought of tomorrow loomed over him. The knowledge of it approached him, as if haunting him, as if it was his shadow. He was bound to it, tied to it, in a death knot where none of them could escape. He was in a loop of normality. I think it's supposed to be normalcy. He was in a loop of normalcy and daily routine, which acted like a white room. He may as well have been a robot. Every action and every word that was automated by now, and there was nothing else to him. The parable would corrupt his mind, then day by day, and disturb his thoughts at night. There was nothing that he could do to push it aside when it was all he could think and see. And all he could think. Oh wait, I read that wrong. It was preventing him from becoming completely mindless and lost to insanity, yet it drove him insane. He couldn't handle them. He didn't want to. He didn't want to keep wishing for something that was so hopeless, something that would only bring misery and torment. He found himself choking on his own sharp breaths in the cover of his bedroom at night, twisting and turning, only for those thoughts to come intrude again. A parasite, something that no medicine could get rid of. Never. Never did he have any of those dreams. Those wishes were hopeless. Those feelings were useless. His thoughts started to morph without his permission. Maybe the narrator was... Wait, that's actually you.
Huh? Where? What?
You just not paying attention.
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah,
Maybe the narrator wasn't a bad person.
they'd say.
Maybe he was just not feeling like himself for that bit. Maybe he does miss you. He'll forgive you if you tell him you'll be better. If you behave this time, if you stop acting so egotistical, if you actually talk to him, maybe he'll understand.
The worst part was Stanley would do it. Would do that. He would change himself. He would do whatever the narrator wanted just to go back. After all, he was useless here anyways. Who would want one less office worker? What would one less office worker matter? Anyone could replace him. In fact, they'd probably be better off that way. He was a miserable human being. Stanley. A yellow button had appeared on his desk when he woke up from a nap in his office. Like it stayed in front of him, it didn't in fact say his name. Fuck, he was going insane. If he wasn't, why would the button sound like exactly like the narrator's voice? Why would he be able to imagine himself right back in the parable right then and there? Hold on. Wait. Stanley suddenly awoke, lifting himself from his chair. He turned the noise off. There was nothing but silence outside his door. No shuffling of papers, or people chatting, or phones ringing. Utter silence. Stanley. The voice was robotic, as if it had been recorded from an old radio. Yet there was still a hint of the narrator's voice in it somewhere. Stanley couldn't care less if he were crazy in that moment. What mattered most was the fact he was back. He was back! He had never been happier, awaiting the view outside his office door. Grabbing the button, he raced outside, eyes wide and ecstatic, finding himself in the empty office room, the start of the parable. Here he was, stood right where he had fantasized about each night, doused in that comforting quiet. Someone cleared their throat. Yes, hello, Stanley. Welcome back. Stanley froze. What was he meant to feel? He had longed for this company since he was rid of it. The man had that. Oh my God! I'm so sorry, guys. This is not going to be a good video. This man had been the one to cut him off from it without a reason. That's just a weird sentence. He'd be the one Stanley had cursed and shunned. The one he'd begged and yearned for. All he could think was,
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I'll be better. I'll behave. Please understand. I'm sorry.
those words were pathetic. Yet, it was all he could think. It was all he wanted to say. It sure is a surprise. Trust me, I know.
What?
Eliana.
I'm sorry.
Those two words ghosted themselves continuously out of his mouth, as if he blew them into thin air. Somehow they got clogged in his throat whenever he thought about using his voice. It simply wasn't possible. And no matter how hard he tried, no matter how hard Stanley tried, I'm
Oh.
sorry, Stanley.
What?
In all honesty, I seem to have misjudged myself. And you, Stanley. I've thought about it. And, well, maybe it's best you stay. Stanley felt his heart jump. In a way, he felt guilty. The way that that the narrator had beat him to apologizing. But right now, he was overwhelmed with emotion. And, you shouldn't have had to put up with that reaction of mine. You shouldn't have had to put up with any of it. I apologize for that as well. The narrator sounded so down, so dejected, that Stanley believed him without a second thought. It was enough to remind him of his past months and the desolation he'd faced. It was nothing to be upset over now. He lived through it already. He was past it, alive and well. All that waiting, all that wishing, all that grieving had been worth it. He was glad. For once, he would be able to live properly again, in the way that he wanted to. What do you say? What do you say? What do you say, Stanley? Would you like to come back with me? Stanley nodded.
Narrator had been lonely too, hadn't he?
All right then. There's no time to waste. I've made so many new things for you. I'm sure you're not even prepared for them, but we can see about that. Off we go, Stanley. That happy tone was what Stanley wanted. Soon, this could all be something they'd joke about. Oh, think how dumb we were, they could say. To think we'd be able to split so easily. Stanley could live like this. There's nothing else that he'd want as badly than to simply live with the narrator by his side. Well, I barely remember what I wrote, but I doubt it's fantastic. But it sure has a storyline. I have so many comedy ideas to do. All right, that was good.
It really is.
That was. I don't read much Wattpad, but it's one of the better ones that I read.
Yeah.
And my throat hurts. This makes me want to write a Wattpad. Uh-oh, spoiler alert, that's something I'm gonna be doing. Ugh. Alright, well, yeah, bye guys. I don't really expect, I don't really have an outro plan. None of this was scripted, so.
Goodbye.
Goodbye!